say you don't support reparations. Why not?
Not everybody suffered equally. I mean, when you go into slavery, it's much more complex than white people were the oppressors and black people were the victims. If you dissect it, you will find there were about 3,700 free blacks who owned 12,000 slaves, black slaves. The question is, do the descendants of those free blacks who owned black slaves, do they pay? Blacks really benefited more the first 100 years after slavery than we have in the last 50 years. I was born in 1937 during the Depression. Everyone in my small, low-income black community, 98% of the households had a man and a woman raising children. Elderly people could walk safely in that community without fear of being assaulted by their grandchildren. Never heard a gunfire during that time. Never heard of a child being shot to death in the crib. But
yeah, guys, this gentleman, he is speaking the truth on this. Man, 100 years post-slavery, black family, they did well. They did really well. Again, man, they were part of in politics. They had their own companies, their own businesses, their own. And now, man, the families are torn apart. The fathers, man, are not part of the homes. The mother and fathers are not married. Again, man, like 1960, I think it was, 75% of black homes had a mother and a father raising the kids, married. And now, man, it's the opposite. Man, 75% of black families are just headed by a single mother. And, man, that's sad. There really is. I mean, really. The whole family unit, the whole black family unit has been torn apart. And again, now they're going after the white and Hispanic men. That's been on the rise for the last so many years as well. But again, what they did was they came in with a welfare state. Hey, look, we'll give you money, but you can't get married. And the more kids you spit out, the more that we'll give you. And again, man, it's infiltrating into the white community as well, and the Hispanic. But again, man, we got to understand what happened. Again, because they were doing well 100 years post until the welfare state, until Lyndon Johnson, until all that. And again, man, we got to really look at what happened and be honest about it. Because again, it wasn't slavery. It wasn't systemic racism. Because again, they were doing fine. Black families are doing okay. Now, I'm not saying everything was perfect. No. And things had to change, and they were changing. But the fact of the matter is, when you give people money and reward people for having kids, and reward people for not getting married, and the government becomes the daddy, you're going to have that kind of stuff. You're going to have that, and you're going to see that over and over again. But again, man, this gentleman right here is speaking the truth.
Today, who have been shot and killed in our cities. If you're talking about remedies, we've got to look beyond saying that every solution has to have a winner and a loser, that blacks can only benefit if whites lose. We have to be defined more than just victims of oppression. When whites were at their worst, blacks are at their best. When we were denied access to hotels, we built our own. We have to communicate to our people the history of how they achieved in the face of oppression. But if we continue to sit back and say all of the challenges that we face in out-of-wedlock births of violence, that somehow the control of that is in the hands of white America, and therefore until white people change, there's nothing that we can do. This sets up a terrible situation for this nation. The big crisis facing America is not racial. It is a moral and spiritual freefall that is consuming our children. The highest death rate among black families It's homicide.
Yeah, man, I always say that it's a spiritual battle. It really is, man. What is happening is spiritual. It's good and evil. It really is. And the fact of the matter is, again, man, he was saying that when whites were at their worst, blacks were at their best. And that's true. That is 100% true. Black people weren't given a thing during that time. And again, man, they came through. They set up their own businesses, their own companies. Again, man, they did well. They did well. Man, if they weren't allowed to go somewhere, they built their own. And again, man, they should be allowed to go. I mean, everyone should be treated equally. Everyone. And I'm not saying they shouldn't be. But again, man, when people are left to their own, to themselves, to do whatever to build something, they do. But if they're given things, they become demoralized. Again, man, you're breaking up the families. You're taking the fathers out of the homes. You're breaking the families up. You're giving the mothers a paycheck. And again, man, those black people after the 1960s really started going down. The black communities really started going down. And again, man, we can't say it's slavery because, man, before that, they were doing just fine. And again, man, I enjoy what the man is saying because, man, what he's saying is the truth. It's a spiritual battle. It's not a physical one. It's a spiritual one. Again, man, you demoralize people by giving them things. If you give somebody a fish, they're not going to learn how to fish. They never will. They're going to become complacent, angry, bitter, and it's being done on purpose.
Among Silicon Valley, the highest level of suicide, 6 times the national average. In Appalachia, there are prescription drugs. And so if we are to address this crisis that is causing our children to lack a sense of personal responsibility or value for their own life, they will take their own life or take someone else's. So in order to address that, we must come together and look beyond race and realize America is drowning because it's in a moral and spiritual freefall. None of us should be defined by the worst of what we were in the past, but we should be defined by what we want to become in the future, and that people are motivated to change when you give them a vision of victories that are possible, not constantly reminding them of injuries to be avoided.
Man, I totally agree with this. I really do. When whites were at their worst, blacks were at their best. Because again, the fact of the matter is, black people, 100 years post-slavery, they did for themselves. I'm not saying that we should have Jim Crow and any kind of segregation or anything else. Not at all. But again, because of that hardship, they did for themselves. They built their own companies, their own schools, their own communities. They were involved with politics. So again, man, they did, and they did well. And the fact of the matter is now, starting in the 1960s, the welfare, everything else, man, they came in, they rewarded people, mothers for having kids at wedlock, which effectively took the black fathers out of the homes. Again, they didn't need them. And again, they were given more money if they weren't there. So again, they took care of the black fathers. And, so again, we saw the families being pulled apart. And the kids, they suffered. They suffered because of this. They grew up in homes with fractured families. Didn't know where daddy was. He was out there. He was doing his thing. Mom was mad and bitter and popping out kids and doing whatever. Things didn't work out. And again, man, they're moving white families and Hispanic families in the same direction. You're going to see that more and more over the next 20 years. You're going to see more and more and more of this. Because again, if you demoralize people by pulling them apart and by giving them money and by funding them without them having to rely upon themselves, you demoralize them. You make them dependent. You make them complacent. And when you do so, you demoralize them and they're easy to take over. They're easy to control. Again, really emotional people who have been demoralized and are upset and angry, they're the ones that you can come in and control. So watch out when people will try to give you stuff. They're wanting to control you. You son of a.